So coming up this weekend is a massive weekend in Singapore for the UFC because they've got UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Korean Zombie, which I will be predicting in this video. But they also have the Road to UFC tournament semi-finals. Also, the day after this, it will be broadcast on UFC Fight Pass, and you can watch the Road to UFC semi-finals the day after this UFC Fight Night. Now, in this video, I will just be predicting the fights on the UFC card, but I will break down and predict the Road to UFC card, and I will go live for a fight companion for the Road to UFC cards as well. I will be going live for a fight companion for this card as well. My term for university has finally ended. It ends this week. So to celebrate, I will be going live on this event here. And I will be live also as well during the week for Dana White's Contender Series. And I will be live every single week. Now, before we do get into it, you do have my We Want Picks 3-day free trial signing up with my code ARTEM and my 125% sign up bonus to BetUS. But with all that being said, now let's get into the predictions. And starting off the card seems to be Seung Choi versus Jarno Errens, and this really could potentially be a win or go home fight for Seung Choi, because Seung Choi, he has been losing fights recently that he probably shouldn't be. You know, I really did believe that he was going to be able to beat Mike Trezano. I thought that he was also going to be able to beat Joshua Culibao, and I thought that he was going to beat Alex Caceres as well. Man, I have not had a good run with Seung Choi whatsoever. This guy is actually an incredible striker. He is a South Korean Muay Thai national champion, but he just spams left hooks, man. He KO'd a guy with a left hook in Julian Erosa 2 years ago, and ever since then, the left hook is all this guy is throwing. He throws left hooks after left hooks after left hooks. It's all he throws, and man, he really needs to just kind of go back to the basics and get back to really what got him on that win streak to begin with in the UFC, and that is his fantastic striking. But man, if Seung Choi just keeps swinging left hooks, Jarno Errens could potentially have a lot of success and make good reads on that, whether it is with counter shots or maybe even going for a takedown. It isn't necessarily Jarno Errens' game too much though. He did take on William Gomez in a somewhat short notice matchup in the France card last year. He'd come up short in a pretty close fight. It was a very fun fight as well. But the way that Jarno Errens kind of fights is he does really like to close the distance. He fights in very well up close. He does have a very strong clinch game. But I'm just going to trust Seung Choi one more time to win this matchup. I do believe that Seung Choi can beat Jarno Errens. I think that he does get it done. At minus 240 though, these odds are a little bit too wide. I mean, his fight IQ has just been scaring me, man. Seung Choi, all he does is spam left hooks. It is a shame that is kind of what he does, but if you do watch his most recent fights, it's all he does. But I do believe that Seung Choi can go out there, put that Muay Thai on Jarno Errens, and win a decision or potentially even find a knockout in this matchup. The next fight on the card is going to be a battle between two very young up-and-coming guys in Yusaku Kinoshita and Billy Goff. These guys are both brawlers. They do love to get into a war, but I am going to go with my first of many underdog picks on this card, and I am going to go with Billy Goff in this matchup here. He is more well-rounded than Yusaku Kinoshita. I do love Yusaku Kinoshita though. This guy, he comes to scrap, he comes to brawl, he absolutely loves to strike. He's a savage, man. He's an absolute savage. His loss before the UFC was a disqualification for grabbing the cage while he was stomping his opponent's head in. He was grabbing the cage while stomping on his opponent's head. If you can watch the tape, it is pretty easy to find. It is ridiculous. It is so crazy. And then he did go out there on Dana White's Contender Series and had a pretty composed and very good performance over Jose Henrique Souza, who was like 6'4", I think, for the weight class. He was absolutely ridiculous in height. But we did see Yusaku Kinoshita go out there and have success on the feet, eventually finding a very nice knockout. He went out there against Adam Fugit in his UFC debut, and the wrestling and grappling was a little bit exposed by Fugit, and I do think that Billy Goff can watch that fight and kind of capitalize on that, because I do believe that Billy Goff is the much better wrestler and grappler in this matchup. The way that Billy Goff wins a lot of his fights is he boxes a bit, he likes to strike, he's very good on the feet, but he also likes to wrestle and grapple, and I believe that is where the discrepancy really is, because I do believe that Billy Goff has the ability to wrestle here. I think he's the better wrestler and grappler in this matchup. I'm going to go Billy Goff to go out there, wrestle and grapple Yusaku Kinoshita. I think he does find a finish eventually. I think he can find a knockout. I'm very familiar with Billy Goff. I have been a fan of his for a very long time, when he beat Gary Bellato Jr. and then a month later turned around and took on Justin Sumter, who's a good fighter himself as well. 2 different weight classes, become a champion in 2 different weight classes for CES MMA, and then he went on and beat Szymon Petrowski after getting dropped very early on into the first round. I'm going to go with Billy Goff to win this matchup. I do think he can find a finish over Kinoshita. I'm probably going to go with like a ground and pound TKO. Maybe a submission could be on the cards. I mean, submissions aren't really something that Billy Goff does too much, but it is something that he probably could do against an opponent, which I do believe he does have the much better grappling edge over. And now we can move on up the card to another underdog pick. You've got Toshiomi Kazama taking on Garrett Armfield. And I am going to go with Toshiomi Kazama. Now, unfortunately, there is a couple of red flags out there for Toshiomi Kazama regarding kind of outside of MMA things that I probably won't touch on in this video. But I do believe that Toshiomi Kazama can go out there and defeat Garrett Armfield. I like Toshiomi Kazama's judo and grappling base. He does have a very bad loss against Shoji Saito, who's 2-2, who he was actually booked to fight on Road to UFC before this fight. And then I think he maybe took this fight to get a little bit of confidence or something, or maybe just get another win on his record. And he lost by KO, which is a pretty bad look, unfortunately. But he went out there and beat, in my opinion, a very, very good opponent in Kiramoali Maimaita Tahiti. And Kiramoali was my pick to win the whole thing, because I thought that the level of competition that Kiramoali had fought would kind of surpass what everybody else in the Road to UFC tournament had done. But he went out there and beat Kiramoali. Now, Kiramoali, you might see his record and think that he's not too great just kind of on paper, but he has been in some really, really good guys. You know, he beat Jia Yi, who was 19-2 at the time, is on Road to UFC for a second time and probably will end up in the UFC very, very soon. Luigi Burren, who's a former UFC fighter and was also on the Road to UFC tournament. He does have wins over not the best competition as well, but he does have some very good wins scattered in there as well throughout his record, as well as a couple of questionable wins, I guess you could say. But the point is that Kiramoali Maimaita Tahiti win is very, very impressive for Toshiomi Kazama. He did go out there and lose to Rinya Nakamura, who's also on this card in the Road to UFC finals, but Toshiomi Kazama will still sign to the UFC anyway, and I do like the signing. I do like the idea of the UFC signing more fighters from Asia and also more fighters from Japan. As for Garrett Armfield, he made his debut on short notice, upper weight class at 145 pounds, taking on a guy that he fought as an amateur in David Onama, and in that matchup, David Onama was a lot bigger than Garrett Armfield. He took Garrett Armfield to the second round, and Garrett Armfield did kind of have a pretty good display, I thought. I mean, everyone did pick David Onama to win that matchup, but Garrett Armfield, I do think that he did showcase a little bit of skills in that good one there. He does have a couple of good KOs very early on into fights. He does wrestle and grapple quite a bit himself. I am going to go Toshiomi Kazama here. I think that Garrett Armfield is the better striker though, but I'm just going to kind of trust that Toshiomi Kazama looks to use that judo background and looks to use that grappling base that he does have, and he is very good on the ground, and look to out-grapple a guy like Garrett Armfield. So give me Toshiomi Kazama to win this matchup here as the underdog. And now we move on to Liang taking on JJ Aldrich. This is a fight which, don't bet on this fight. I mean, this is definitely one to skip. You know, you just don't need to bet on it. It's going to be a fun fight, though. I mean, if Liang wins, it probably would be quite entertaining because she has so many finishes on her record, dude. This girl has been to decision once. She's got 2 wins by disqualification as well. But all of her wins, aside from one, are in the first round. 10 wins by sub in round 1, 6 wins by KO in round 1. Are they over good competition? Not necessarily. She does have a loss to Kehi Yan, who I think is a very, very good fighter and probably should be in the UFC now. But she hasn't looked too great in the UFC. You know, she did kind of get dominated a little bit by Ariana Canelossi. That was Ariana Canelossi's big coming out party. And then she did get KO'd by Silvana Gomez Juarez. But Liang's a fun fighter. I mean, 18 wins in the very first round is absolutely no joke whatsoever. But the thing is, JJ Aldrich has already proven herself to be a pretty good fighter. And JJ Aldrich as well, her experience in the UFC doesn't really get talked about too much because she has fought 12 times in the UFC. In fact, I actually did watch her fight live. I believe it was against Chan Mi John in 2017 in the Mark Hunt versus Derek Lewis fight. It was. I watched this fight live. I was in the grandstands and I watched this matchup take place live. And that was in 2017. And she's been in the UFC since, man. She's been in the UFC since 2016. 7 years in the UFC. She must be on a pretty good contract now. And I do think that JJ Aldrich can win against Liang here. I think she is the better fighter. I mean, that's why she's minus 700. She should be the better striker. She was, I'm pretty sure she's like a brown belt or a black belt in BJJ as well. I mean, she can handle Liang kind of anywhere. I think that JJ Aldrich wins by decision or maybe even a late finish, but it's just a fight to avoid by any means. I'm going to go with Aldrich. The 16% people picking Liang most by decision. I mean, just look at our topology. Now Liang isn't winning a decision, but I mean, now that I've said it, I've spoken it into existence, haven't I? But now we can move on up to Kenan Seung versus Rolando Bedoya. I feel like Kenan Seung kind of had a little bit of a coming out party when he took on Gary, and he knocked down Gary and almost finished him with that massive left hand. But after that, Gary kind of really did just piece him up and really figured him out. But Kenan Seung had that massive moment in the first round where he really hurt Gary. But before that, he has been in the UFC for quite a long time. You know, he's fought Alex Morono, he's fought a couple of really good guys. But now he's taking on a guy that is coming off a very unexpected debut. Now, I know Rolando Bedoya. I've been a fan of Rolando Bedoya for a while. I've made like 2 different videos on Rolando Bedoya and my fighters from Peru that the UFC should sign, because I do genuinely believe that the UFC is trying to build a market in Peru, because they have been signing so many fighters from Peru recently that have signed a guy off Dana White's Contender Series. But before that, they signed like 2 or 3 guys from Peru, with Rolando Bedoya being one of them. And Rolando Bedoya went out there and had a very good performance against Chaos Williams. Now, in that matchup, though, man, I feel like Chaos Williams kind of, it was almost like Chaos Williams just wasn't as good as we thought he was, you know? Because, like, Rolando Bedoya, he's very hittable. He doesn't move his head much. He's a brawler. He's a little bit too small for the weight class. He's just, there's kind of like a lot of things about Rolando Bedoya that Chaos Williams should have been able to exploit and knock him out. But he just didn't. We saw Chaos Williams be low volume. We saw Rolando Bedoya have a lot of success in that matchup, in a pure striking matchup. And I feel like this might also be a pure striking matchup. But this is one where I think that Seung Kenan is a really good underdog. You know, like, I do believe that Rolando Bedoya is going to win. I am going to pick him to win this matchup. But Seung Kenan is also, just like Chaos Williams, very big for the weight class. Massive legs as well is one thing that everyone was talking about when he took on Gary. Huge for the weight class, very good fighter. But I am going to go with Rolando Bedoya. Just kind of been tricky on the feet. But this is a pick that could change before the fight begins, man. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not confident in Rolando Bedoya winning this matchup at all. And I am someone that has been high on Rolando Bedoya for a long time. I think that Seung Kenan, he does have the power to finish the fight if he needs to. And he does kind of have the strength to maybe outmuscle Rolando Bedoya up against the cage. Maybe even wrestle if he wants to, because Rolando Bedoya is a striker. And that is what he is. But he's a dangerous striker. He's an aggressive striker. He loves to scrap. Very heavy Muay Thai style, not very good defensively, lots of output. I'm going to go with that to win this matchup over Seung Kenan by decision. But if Seung Kenan wins this fight, I genuinely will not be that surprised. I'm going to go with Rolando Bedoya by decision in this fight. And as we move up the card, you got Chidi Njokuani taking on Michal Oleksiejczuk, and this is going to be another underdog pick for me because I am going to be going with Chidi Njokuani in this matchup. I don't believe you can get him at plus money at the moment. He's like minus 105 or something like that, minus 105. I probably should have said, but I think that he does have more tools on the feet than Michal Oleksiejczuk. Now, Michal Oleksiejczuk, he come into the UFC as a pure boxer and really not really anything else. And he was a pure boxer for a long time, but recently we have seen quite a lot added to his game. He has been getting a couple of fights done, using a little bit of grappling and wrestling to kind of defend takedowns and defend sort of transitions that he's put into. And I do like Michal Oleksiejczuk for that. You can tell that he is becoming a good and much better fighter. He just lost to Caio Borralho, but I thought that he had a pretty good performance against Caio, considering I thought that was like the most nightmare matchup he possibly could have taken. But I do like Chidi Njokuani in this one here because, as I said, I do think he's got more tools to give on the feet. Michal Oleksiejczuk doesn't throw too many kicks. Chidi Njokuani is a Muay Thai striker. He throws a lot of kicks. He's very fun on the feet as well. Very high level. He hasn't had the most success recently, but he took on Albert Duraev in a fight which a lot of people do believe that he could have won. Gregory Rodriguez is a pretty solid fighter as well. And he was having a lot of success in that matchup as well. He completely cut him open. And before that, he did KO Dusko Todorovic. And before that, he did beat Marc-Andre Barriault in like 9 seconds or 18 seconds or something. And then he beat Mario Souza. But for Chidi Njokuani, I don't think this is a win or go home fight for Chidi Njokuani whatsoever. But I do think this is a fight that Chidi Njokuani definitely needs to win, so he can kind of move on with his career a little bit. And I do believe that he can get it done over Michal Oleksiejczuk in this one here. I think that he can utilize the kicks, kick out the legs of Michal Oleksiejczuk, which we have seen fighters do before against him, kick the body, throw some head kicks as well. I think he's going to be faster than Michal. Michal has looked good since he moved down from 205 pounds, but I do like Chidi and Njokuani in this matchup here. We have seen a pretty well-rounded game out of Chidi as well when he took on Mario Souza. I'm going to go with Chidi and Njokuani to win this matchup. I think that he does actually find a knockout over the very tough Michal Oleksiejczuk. So give me Chidi and Njokuani to win this matchup by KO, and what is going to be a very, very fun fight, because I do believe that Njokuani just has more to offer when it does come down to the striking. And now we move on to a heavyweight fight. Waldo Cortes-Acosta taking on Lukasz Brzeski. This is an interesting fight for Lukasz Brzeski, because I kind of thought that maybe Brzeski was going to wait for a Dana White's Contender Series guy to show up, or maybe like an easier matchup for him. And I've kind of made it pretty obvious who I am picking, because I am going to be going with Waldo Cortes-Acosta in this matchup. I think it's a bad matchup for Lukasz Brzeski. Now, Lukasz Brzeski, though, is a very good heavyweight striker, but I do believe that Waldo Cortes-Acosta is a better heavyweight striker. Both of these guys don't necessarily have the most power in the world. Now, Lukasz Brzeski, he was KOing people, and then he did beat Dylan Potter. USADA got in the way a little bit, and ever since then, man, he just has not looked like the same guy at all. And Waldo Cortes-Acosta is a guy that came into the UFC pretty much a pure boxer, was exposed as a pure boxer, even though I did know that he literally is a pure boxer. That's kind of all he is. And he eats a lot of leg kicks as well. That's another thing about Waldo Cortes, but he's a pure boxer. That's literally all he's got, and it's all he brings. But at heavyweight, especially kind of just in general in heavyweight, you don't really have to be super well-rounded, because a lot of these guys are specialists in one area, and Waldo Cortes-Acosta is a specialist in boxing. He doesn't check leg kicks. He doesn't really throw leg kicks too much. He's very happy to brawl. He did lose against Marcos Rogério de Lima, recently, who was able to kind of wrestle against him and mix it up quite a little bit. But he beat Chase Sherman in a fight which is a little bit too close to call. He beat Jared Vanderaa in a fight which is too close to call. But he looked really good against Danilo Suzace, and that fight was a little bit of a war before he ended up getting the knockout. I don't think that he can KO Lukasz Brzeski, though. Lukasz Brzeski's had an interesting UFC career, because he started off with the USADA complications, and then he lost a fight to Martin Buday that he should have won, because he outstruck Buday in that matchup. And then he lost to Carl Williams, but Carl Williams is a nightmare matchup for a guy like Brzeski, because Carl Williams is a very good wrestler at heavyweight. But when it comes down to this matchup, though, it almost feels like a step up in competition for Lukasz Brzeski, because I think Waldo Cortes-Acosta is a pretty high-level heavyweight. You know, this guy was looked at as a 9-0 prospect coming up, a guy that could potentially be ranked one day. He is still pretty young for heavyweight as well. He's not 32 years old yet, but I do think that Waldo Cortes-Acosta can go out there against Lukasz Brzeski and box him up for 3 rounds. I think he is the better boxer. Maybe Brzeski could mix in leg kicks. That could be interesting, but I am going to go with Waldo Cortes-Acosta to win this matchup by decision using his boxing, and just box up Lukasz Brzeski for 3 rounds. And now we have another heavyweight fight between Junior Tafa and Parker Porter, and this one is interesting because Junior Tafa does not like Waldo Cortes-Acosta, and Waldo Cortes-Acosta does not like Junior Tafa, so it's interesting that they're fighting on the same card, but not against each other. That is a matchup that 110% will happen one day. And now we can go on to Junior Tafa taking on Parker Porter. I overhyped Junior Tafa, man. He's not as good as I thought he was. And it's hard to say that, man, but Junior Tafa, I was so high on Junior Tafa, former Glory kickboxer, not only just a Glory kickboxer, a top 10 ranked in the world Glory kickboxer, very good striker in a way that is interesting, because when you think of Glory kickboxer, you probably think of a very technical fighter, whereas Junior Tafa, he does have good technique to him, but this guy is an absolute slugger, man. He absolutely loves to brawl. He made it all the way to the top at Glory by brawling, by not really throwing too many kicks and just absolutely slugging with guys. So many round 1 KOs in Glory kickboxing against fantastic kickboxers. Once again, in Glory kickboxing, he's just such a good striker, man. It's such a shame that he went out there against Muhammad Usman and got so trigger happy on the feet. He was just throwing, man. He's just throwing to throw. He was missing a lot. I thought that he was an absolute lock to defeat Muhammad Usman in that matchup. Usman went out there and tried to make the fight as boring as possible. But Junior Tafa, man, I think in this matchup against Parker Porter would be smart to wrestle. And Parker Porter does have a wrestling base and he can wrestle. But I honestly don't think that he gets the opportunity to. I'm going to go with Tafa again. I'm going to go with Tafa again to win by first round knockout. He burned so bad last time, dude. I was so high on Junior Tafa going into that Mo Usman fight. I was like, he's going to expose Muhammad Usman. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. He beat Tsuyoshi Sadario, which is a similar matchup. He beat a couple of other good guys as well. Kevin Fatai was a pretty good guy in the regional scene. I mean, to be fair, not really, but very experienced. But I think Junior Tafa can knock out Parker Porter, man. I really do. Parker Porter on the feet. He does leave himself to be hit. Junior Tafa's older brother as well. Justin Tafa knocked him out brutally, like slipped him pretty badly. Now, do I think that Junior Tafa is as good as Justin Tafa? Maybe not, but there are 3 Tafa brothers, and apparently they've got a younger brother, and that younger brother is meant to be the one that goes all the way. I've heard Justin Tafa and Junior Tafa both say that the younger brother is the one that goes all the way, but Junior Tafa had so much success in Glory Kickboxing, he just did not display it well whatsoever in his UFC debut, but I do still believe he goes out there and knocks out Parker Porter. I do think he's the better striker. He's got so much experience in kickboxing. He's got decent experience against pretty good guys, I guess, all over the world in MMA. I'm going to go Junior Tafa to win this one here by knockout. The one thing I do love about Tafa as well, this guy fights so often, dude. I would not be surprised if he wins this fight and calls someone out to fight him at UFC 293. Junior Tafa just loves to fight. He fights often. He wants to fight 4 times this year. He's going to have to cram a few fights in, but I love Junior Tafa, man. I do believe that he can go out there and find the knockout. Now we move on to Erin Blanchfield versus Tyler Santos. This is a fight that was booked a while ago. It did get pulled, and Erin Blanchfield did take on, I believe it was Jessica Andrade instead. But now it has been rebooked. I think it's a smart rebooking. I think it is a booking that does make sense because the winner of this fight 100% will fight the winner of Oleksiejczuk versus Valentina Shevchenko for the title. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think that Erin Blanchfield wins this fight. And I think that Erin Blanchfield beats Valentina Shevchenko or Oleksiejczuk if they are to fight as well, because I think that Erin Blanchfield truly is that good. I picked Erin Blanchfield to go out there and beat Jessica Andrade, but a lot of people were picking Jessica Andrade. And I have picked Erin Blanchfield as well. I mean, I picked her to beat Molly McCann, but she was a big favorite in that matchup. I think Erin Blanchfield is just that good. She is so good at wrestling and grappling. And I know that Tyler Santos is also so good at wrestling and grappling. And Tyler Santos was the one that really did expose Valentina Shevchenko for potentially not really having that good of defensive grappling. And that Tyler Santos versus Valentina Shevchenko fight was incredibly close. She did beat Joanne Wood as well in a very impressive fight. But I'm going to go with Erin Blanchfield. I think that Erin Blanchfield can go out there and actually get the takedowns on Tyler Santos. Not be afraid of Tyler Santos' grappling because her grappling is so good herself. And go out there and win a decision over Tyler Santos here. Maybe she could find a submission, but I do believe this is a pretty good matchup for Erin Blanchfield because I do believe that Erin Blanchfield is the better wrestler in this matchup. I believe that Erin Blanchfield is the one that's going to be going for takedowns earlier. I think that she gets them, and if she can avoid the submissions, I do believe that Erin Blanchfield can go out there and win a decision over Tyler Santos in this matchup. And now we've got Rinya Nakamura versus Fernie Garcia, and I absolutely love Rinya Nakamura, man. I'm not going to make it a secret. I am like a huge fan of Rinya Nakamura, and if you guys don't know who Rinya Nakamura is, I really hope that this is a coming out party for him because he did have such an impressive performance, multiple impressive performances on the Road to UFC tournament. He went into that Road to UFC tournament not very experienced whatsoever, and he just dominated it, dude. He took on the 8-3 Gugan Guzman when he was 4-0 in the tournament, won by first round submission. Knocked out Shohei Noze by round 1 KO. Knocked out Toshiomi Kazama by first minute KO. And Toshiomi Kazama is now on this card, and I am picking him to win his fight. But the thing is about Rinya Nakamura is he is so good at wrestling. He is a former under-21 freestyle wrestling world champion. He's a national champion in Japan for wrestling. He just has so much wrestling background on this guy. He uses that wrestling background kind of as a way to brawl on the feet because his striking is so good. His striking is up there with his wrestling and grappling, which if you can believe it. The problem with Rinya Nakamura though is I feel like this guy might love to fight too much. Now that might sound like a crazy weird statement, but if you do watch Rinya Nakamura fight, he genuinely might love it too much because he goes out there and he just swings, man. He absolutely brawls with guys and he leaves himself so open to be hit. He's just absolutely winging punches. He's just brawling. He's swinging in the pocket. He's exchanging. He's super aggressive, and that is so fun to watch. But the problem is, I do worry at one point Rinya Nakamura is going to get caught. But the thing is, the reason why he can get away with being so unbelievably aggressive on the feet and just like fight with like an absolute madman is because he's got that wrestling base to back up on, because his wrestling, as I said, is so good. He truly is a fantastic wrestler, and maybe he might decide to showcase that in this matchup. But Frankie Garcia is an interesting case because he did win on Dana White's Contender Series against Joshua Weems. He knocked out Joshua Weems, but before that, all of these wins that he does have, like, he wrestles in those matchups, and then he takes on Brady Highstand, gets out wrestled in that matchup. Takes on Johnny Newsom, doesn't really wrestle in a matchup at all, just kind of gets outstrike. It's a weird career for Frankie Garcia, where I feel like if he actually did kind of go back to what he come up with, which was the wrestling base, he would have probably had a lot more success in the UFC. But I think that we can see Rinya Nakamura go out there. He's got this. He's got this no matter where the fight goes, man. He's an absolute... He's a savage, man. He's a savage on the feet. He's a savage on the ground. I think that he does knock out Frankie Garcia in round 1. But if not, it's going to be a round 1 submission. Nakamura, I think this is his coming out party. I genuinely do believe that Rinya Nakamura will be Japan's first UFC champion. That's a bold statement to put on a guy pretty much making his UFC debut after his Road to UFC finals win. But I think Rinya Nakamura is that good. I'm on the hype train. I'm the conductor of the Rinya Nakamura hype train. I think that he does get it done. I think he goes on to do some incredible things in his career. And now we can move on to Giga Chikadze taking on Oleksiejczuk, and Giga Chikadze has taken a lot of time off. You know, he hasn't fought for about 1 year and 6 months after he lost to Calvin Kattar. And in that time, Oleksiejczuk has been pretty active. We've seen Oleksiejczuk fight 3 times in that time. He lost to Sadiq Youssef in a pretty close competitive fight. And then he took on Julian Erosa, knocked out Julian Erosa, and then he just recently took on Daniel Pineda and beat Daniel Pineda. He probably could have finished Daniel Pineda in the 3rd round because Pineda really did gas out in that matchup. But this is an interesting fight because Giga Chikadze, you know, at one point everyone was so high on him, but now I feel like people are so low on him. And the thing about Oleksiejczuk is Oleksiejczuk is a veteran by all veteran means. This guy has fought in MMA 34 times. This guy has fought for the UFC many times. I'm going to get the exact number. This guy has fought for the UFC 28 times. He has fought for the UFC for a very long time, and he has been around for so long. He's been in the UFC since 2010, and he's not even that old. He's 35 years old, and he's still doing it at the top of the weight class. I feel like now, at the age of 35, is really when Oleksiejczuk has put it all together, and maybe he's in his prime now. And I think that this potentially could be a good matchup for him, but I am slightly going to lean Giga Chikadze, but this is one of those favorites again where he's minus 225, and my confidence does not reflect minus 225 whatsoever. I do understand that Giga Chikadze had so much success before the Kattar fight because he looked so good against Edson Barboza. He looked so good against Cub Swanson with that crazy body kick and finished the fight. But when he took on Calvin Kattar, on the feet, he had a lot of success. He really did. But the problem was, as soon as Calvin Kattar pressured and pushed him forward, pushed him backwards, and wrestled a little bit and mixed it up and really got in Giga Chikadze's face, he did wilt quite a bit. Now, I don't think that he wilted as much as people like to kind of say. I think people do kind of overrate, not overrate, so I guess like maybe underrate the performance of Chikadze. I feel like the reason why it was just so mind-blowing that he wilted like he did against Calvin Kattar was just because he looked so unstoppable before that. But what it did tell us as fans and other fighters as well in the UFC, that if you pressure Giga Chikadze and you push him forward and you put him in uncomfortable spots, he will wilt a little bit. You know, he won't be the same guy that's going out there and just knocking everyone out looking so good on the feet. But when it comes to this fight, I don't think Oleksiejczuk is that guy. Oleksiejczuk, you know, when he should grapple, he doesn't really, because I felt like maybe he could have really got into a lot of grappling transitions with a completely gassed out Daniel Pineda in the 3rd round. He probably could have finished him on the feet as well. He just didn't. I don't really see Oleksiejczuk doing what Calvin Kattar did to him. I think that Giga Chikadze does come back. I find it hard to believe that he's going to come back a better version that we saw against Calvin Kattar, because he is 35 years old now, and that is pretty old for 145. The time off does concern me a little bit. I'm going to go Giga Chikadze to outstrike Oleksiejczuk, but if Oleksiejczuk goes out there, puts the wrestling shoes on, and really does try and take down Chikadze and out-grapple him, I think he could have success with that game plan. I'm going to go with Giga Chikadze to win this fight, but Caceres is a great fighter, man. I think Caceres is underrated. A lot of people picked him to lose against Daniel Pineda. I was pretty confident Caceres won that fight. I think a lot of people do underrate Alex Caceres. I think they just look at his 21-13 record and think that he's not that good. But the reality is, when you've fought in UFC for 13 years, you are going to pile up a couple of losses. So give me Chikadze to win this matchup. I'm going to go with Chikadze to win by decision. But it's going to be an interesting fight. It really is. You know, we've got Anthony Smith taking on Ryan Spann in an interesting rematch, because in this rematch, Anthony Smith did win the very first fight over Ryan Spann, and to be fair, the fight wasn't ridiculously close, as in, it ended in the first round. Anthony Smith submitted him within 1 round, and the thing about Ryan Spann is, he's so inconsistent. Like, it's so hard to predict Ryan Spann fights because you don't really know what he's going to do. I did pick Kopylov to beat him, and once again I was very confident that not Kopylov, man, far out. I had Nikita Krylov to beat him, and I was very confident that Krylov was going to beat him, but I mean, everyone was on Spann in that matchup, but it was because he was looking so good before that. He knocked out Dominic Reyes with a jab. He just submitted Ion Kutalaba within 3 minutes, and he knocked out Misha Shirkinov as well, which is a pretty good win. Now, Shirkinov's not in the UFC anymore, but it's still a good win to have. The problem with Ryan Spann is he's so kill or be killed, and his fight IQ is pretty low. He's just so questionable in so many ways because he's inconsistent. He's got pretty bad fight IQ as well. But I do believe that he can go out there and knock out Anthony Smith, you know, because I think this is not really a pick of Ryan Spann than anything. This is an Anthony Smith fade. You know, I'm going to go with Ryan Spann to knock out Anthony Smith in the very first round. Can Anthony Smith put on the wrestling shoes, get him down, and submit him as well? Yes, absolutely, he could do that, but this is a fight, you know, I feel like as well, this is just a fight I don't think you should bet on unless fight doesn't go the distances, like any good odds whatsoever. I mean, I think that we're going to see Spann knock out Anthony Smith in the very first round, but just one of those fights. It really is. Spann is so unpredictable as a fighter. Smith, I feel like as well at this point in his career, is also unpredictable as a fighter. He's also kind of losing it a little bit. He's getting a little bit delusional. He's, yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot going on with Anthony Smith, that's all I'll say. I'm going to go with Ryan Spann to knock him out in the very, very first round. Now we can move on to the main event. You got Max Holloway taking on Seung Jung. A lot of people hate this fight. Honestly, I don't hate it at all. I don't like it that much, but I don't hate it, you know, because at the end of the day, who else would Max Holloway fight? I feel like a lot of people say, oh, this is so disrespectful to Seung Jung. They shouldn't have done this fight. You know, Seung Jung's got no chance whatsoever. Now, I don't entirely disagree, but I don't completely agree either, because this is a fight that the Korean Zombie actually really wanted. This isn't a matchup to put Korean Zombie up there against Max Holloway as a way to build up Max Holloway and kind of take advantage of an older Korean Zombie. Now, maybe it could seem like it is that, because at the point, Korean Zombie unfortunately isn't in his prime anymore. But at the end of the day, the truth is about this matchup is that the Korean Zombie is coming off a title fight to Alexander Volkanovski. He is still a top contender. It's not like Seung Jung is like kind of at his point in his career like Chris Weidman, and now they're just giving him to Dricus du Plessis to pad his record or something like that. This is still a top contender in the featherweight division at Seung Jung. Now, yes, he is older than most top contenders. He is 36 years old, and yes, I would say he is out of his prime, and yes, I would say he got beaten up very badly by Volkanovski, and Max Holloway. It's not really a fight that you want to take on if you are older in your career, because Max Holloway, the way that Max Holloway fights, is he's very good at boxing. He's mixed in a lot of kicks as well recently, is one thing I've noticed, but for the most part, very, very high volume, very aggressive striker, and I think that the way that he does win this fight truly is by putting on a lot of volume of Seung Jung and beating him up. But the thing is, it's not really like Seung Jung has no chance whatsoever, because he does have wrestling and grappling if he needs to use it. But the problem is with Seung Jung, you know, he's going to be a lot lower volume than Max Holloway. He is going to be more powerful than Max Holloway, though, because Max Holloway doesn't really finish people on the feet, whereas Seung Jung does have that KO power. But we can't really forget too much about Seung Jung. You know, when he took on, I wasn't thinking of Brian Ortega, sorry, I was thinking of, when he took on Yaya Rodriguez, he was winning that fight until he got KO'd. And he's just recently, you know, he hasn't been fighting that much, but he beat Renato Moicano, he beat Frankie Edgar, he fought Dan Ige and beat him, And then he just lost to the champion, Volkanovski. He's coming off a title fight. It's not like you can just go out there and give him an unranked guy. He just fought for the title. But with this matchup, though, it is a bad matchup for Chan Sung Jung. I do think that Max Holloway goes out there, lands a lot of volume on Chan Sung Jung, and I do believe that Max Holloway does finish this fight. Max Holloway doesn't finish a lot of guys, but unfortunately, I do believe that Chan Sung Jung is going to be a guy that gets finished by Max Holloway. I mean, the Korean Zombie is an absolute legend of the game. Really has kind of opened a lot of opportunities for Korean fighters in the UFC. He owns his own gym called Korean Zombie MMA. A lot of fighters on the Road to UFC tournament last year and this year train at his gym. He is definitely kind of putting on, I guess, like, in a way, like, really putting on South Korea for the UFC. And I think we will see a lot more fighters come out of this gym because he is a great coach. And you can tell that when he does coach his fighters for Road to UFC. But I'm going to go Max Holloway to win this fight by knockout. Probably like third round. I think he's going to go out there, land a lot of volume, and beat Chan Sung Jung. But I think people are overreacting a little bit with the matchmaking. Because to start with, Korean Zombie wanted this fight. These two have never fought each other before. And they kind of are from that era where they probably could have and should have fought each other at one point. And just, I mean, Chan Sung Jung's, he was a title contender in his last fight. So, you know, I'm going to go with Holloway. I'm going to go with Holloway by KO. Yes, Holloway doesn't really finish anybody, but Chan Sung Jung, I think he's going to eat a lot of volume. I don't mind this matchup, though. I don't hate it as much as everybody else does, so I'm going to go with Max Holloway to win by KO. But it is what it is. I mean, TKZ, as I said, he's a top contender, so he can make his. He's a grown man. He's 36 years old. You know, he can sign his own contracts. The UFC didn't force him to make this one. Even the Korean Zombies team told him that they didn't want him to take this fight, and he's done it anyway. So good for the Korean Zombies. He's got what he wanted. I like the fact that this fight is in Singapore as well. I mean, I like the fact that the cards in Singapore. I am a big fan of international cards. I think that the UFC should do them more often because when they do go international, they do seem to get a lot of pop from the crowd. They do seem to put on some interesting cards as well. Like, I like the idea because like, we're getting a lot of Chinese fighters, Japanese fighters, South Korean fighters all on one card. You would never get that in a card that is in the USA, aside from that card that they did have featuring a lot of Asian fighters. I believe it was at the start of the year with the Road to UFC tournament season 1 ending then, but you kind of know what I mean. I like the idea of having a lot of international talent kind of sprinkled throughout a card. I like this card. I think it's a great card. I think it's a great card to showcase a lot of Asian talent coming up. And I am very much looking forward to it and the Road to UFC tournament that will follow and Dana White's Contender Series as well. There's a lot of UFC to unpack this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and I'll see you guys in the next one.